What was your screw this, I quit moment? I worked at a pretty major electronics company as an engineer. I put in for 2 weeks of vacation for the birth of my child. My boss didn't approve my vacation, saying I only give 1 week vacation for anyone ever. I lost my cool a bit, but had no choice, because I had to have insurance, and I was set to receive a bonus in 2 months. In that moment, I knew I was done with that place. Fast forward 2 months, and -3 manufacturing engineers that had already quit. Nobody received their bonus on the date, which it was supposed to be issued. People were pissed. It became a huge deal and everyone was aware that they were avoiding the mass exodus that was going to occur as soon as the bonus hit. 1.5 months later, the check clears. I was one of 7 engineers that quit the day the bonus hit the bank. We all went to lunch lol. I worked in a bakery for a while. They scheduled me for 3 AM to 7 PM for 14 days in a row. 9th day and I fell asleep at the counter and got yelled at. Walked out, but I was so tired I couldn't walk home. Roommate picked me up. I fell asleep in the car on the way home and stayed asleep for 9 hours. Roommate checked on me, brought me a pillow and blanket. When I woke up and came inside after the 9 hours, I realized I had lost 3 days in sleep deprived stupor. While I was asleep in the car, my boss and store owner had decided that trying to break into my apartment and harass my roommate was the right thing to do. I was working in a cafe by the beach over the summer. Since the cafe was on a pier, it was only open at the weekend. They had a real issue with the shelf life of produce such as fresh milk, cream, etc. So they would freeze everything on Sunday then defrost the next week. They never kept track of what had been frozen, so they kept breaking the cold chain all the time. I didn't like that and kept track all the time to not poison anyone, but I knew the manager didn't care. One day, a customer ordered a slice of carrot cake, and when I went to look for it, I found it all moldy, so of course I chucked it in the bin. The manager ordered me to get it back and scrape the mold and serve it anyway. I was out the door 5 minutes later. I worked weekends on a dementia unit at an assisted living in grad school. My job was doing activities on the floor. There were 2 people who did bathrooms, changing, lunch, etc. They were always on their phones. I'd get asked by visitors to take residents to the bathroom, which I was not trained for. One day one of the residents fell, and it was chaos. I was so tired of being the only one actually doing anything that I finished my shift and left a voicemail quitting. When I said goodbye to the residents that evening, one looked at me and said, "You aren't coming back, are you?" Gut-wrenching. It was the most exhausting work I ever did because there was no off moment. I was 16 or 17, working at a local cafe that I'd worked at for a couple years. I was a waitress, till worker, barista, dishwasher, as it was a local cafe and shop mixed together. I did everything except cook. Shout out to the chef, though he was the best part of it. However, being under 18 and UK minimum wage laws being what they were, I worked for £4.35 an hour, which was literally half of what my coworkers got paid for doing the exact same job. Sometimes I trained people who got paid more than me. Keep in mind, there are no tips in the UK. Eventually I brought this up to my manager, saying, "Hey, I've worked here 2 years, and even though I was young when I started, I now have enough experience that I work at the same level or higher as some others weren't coffee trained, as those getting paid £9. She hummed and hawed and said she'd have to bring it up to the board because it was a community cafe and a bunch of people owned shares. A month later she got back to me and said, "Good news. I was approved a raise to £4.50 an hour. They raised my wage 15p. I quit on the spot. My first girlfriend was unreasonably irritable. I'm a pretty mellow guy, and I hang out with mostly mellow people. But she was the first person who would let me see her naked regularly, so I stuck it out until one day we were getting ready to go somewhere and she got in a fight with her brother. She carried her aggravation in the car with her and was driving like she was in GTA or something. She was tailgating this guy so bad we couldn't see anything on the other side of his car. She needs to take a left. It was a bare left, so no need to stop to turn. And she doesn't slow down at all, and there's another car coming and misses us by maybe a foot, and we were definitely gonna die if he hit us because she was going like 70 miles per hour and we'd have been spun down a hill. No chance. And you'd think I'd have screamed and yelled, but I had this clarity that I knew I no longer wanted to be with her and was like, what are you doing? And she starts yelling at me like I'd done something. Relationship was over right then and there basically. I had a nervous breakdown at work. I was working on a $1 million project. The two project directors didn't get along. They had run off 5 assistants over the course of 3 years. I really thought that I could do it after hearing all the rumors about the office Discord. They were known for using their assistants as whipping posts. One day after being yelled at for the umpteenth time for something I did not do, I wrote a short letter of resignation and I left immediately. I was depressed and considering suicide by that time. It was one of the worst decisions of my life, but at least I'm still alive. I had been working at a place 3 years. First year they told me they don't do raises the first year. Second year they said no one was getting raises due to upper management vetoes on wages because of company earnings not being where they should. Kept getting told I was their best employee, highest marks, that my boss was fighting for me. Year 3. My boss is excited, tells me I'm definitely getting a raise this time. He said there was no way upper management could ignore me exceeding expectations for a third year. Tells me how he said he was not going to take no for an answer. He goes over my review. He talks about how much I helped revolutionize how they approached efficiency and key processes. I'm hyped. My boss is hyped. He tells me my previous wage. Then he tells me my raise. 5 cents. He is still grinning expectantly, like I won the lottery. My mood is destroyed. I can't help myself. I say that's it. He is offended. Tells me I need to correct my attitude and erases a raise. Sarcasm overdrive engaged. I say wow, you are totally right. I should celebrate and buy a pack of gum. He fumes and walks out. Sends another employee to tell me I should go home. Later he leave a VM on my phone to tell me if I want to continue working there. He wants a written apology to him and every employee, signed by the whole staff, because I ruined the morale of the team. I got a new job making twice my previous wage after that. Not a huge story, but the only time I've quit a job. I worked at a grocery store during high school for 4 years. When I moved away for college, I got a part-time job at a grocery store run by the same parent company, and they honored my 4 years of work at the previous employer, so of the new hires I got to pick my job. I picked a cushy produced job and told them I would not do carts. I didn't want to go outside in freezing Canadian weather to collect carts. I was told produce employees don't collect carts. Part of why I picked produce. A few days into my shift, this tiny little kid who probably had a year at most on the job came to me and told me I had to do carts. I told him I didn't do carts. He said go ask my dad. Turns out his dad was the manager of the grocery department. I went and talked to him, and he informed me that I had to do carts because everyone takes turns. My produce manager wasn't there, and the lady that hired me also wasn't there. The entire time I was talking to the manger, the little kid had a grin on his face. I grabbed the reflective vest from the little devil and went outside, strapped the vest to one of the carts, and went home. My manager called me and begged me to come back to work a few days later, and I asked why I was being forced to do carts by a manager that wasn't mine. It turns out the grocery manager was actually the son of the owner of that particular location. 2 generations of nepotism at play. I got a job elsewhere. Typing it all out nearly 20 years later sounds petty, but I really didn't want to do those carts, and I wasn't about to work in a store that was run by a family that had no qualms making anyone without their last name do the most undesirable jobs. I worked at a nationally known, in the US, fast food chain, red-headed lass, as a cashier, and had gotten my best friend a job at the same store. After a few months, she had moved and asked to be transferred to a branch that was closer to her home as her transportation was limited. Her request was denied several times. After her third request to transfer, she had to tender her resignation. On her last day, our store manager waited half a heartbeat after she walked out the door for her last shift to start talking about her physical appearance, calling her a cow and much worse. I couldn't bear to hear anymore, so I took my apron off, handed it to the store manager, and told him that if he talked about all of his employees like that, he could definitely say something about my fat self walking out mid-shift right before dinner rush. Never felt better about leaving a toxic environment. Working for a local call center, I got an order one night to falsify my stats in a way that would get me fired if I got caught. Told I was definitely going to be fired if I didn't. Everybody else in the department decided to take their chances on not getting their stats audited so they could keep their jobs. I broke down, like literally stabbing myself in the thigh with an X-Acto knife blade under the desk to try to stave off catatonia. Finally got up, walked over to the supervisor, and told him if I was screwed either way, if he was going to give me illegal orders and not put them in writing, I quit. He followed me out to the parking lot and spent at least 15 minutes trying to talk me out of it. Told me he wasn't really going to fire me if I refused to falsify my stats, that it was just a saying, that I wasn't going to get audited anyway. He was sure of it. Just come back in, go back to work, falsify your stats like everybody else. I told him my decision was final, got in the car, and made it home before I broke down. Worked as a teacher for a preschool. It was one of my first real jobs after graduating. I was so excited at first because I loved my students and my coworkers. The pay wasn't great, but it was okay for what it was, considering I was doing it online. This was in 2020. I'm actually a graphic designer / illustrator by degree, but wanted to go into education because I couldn't handle the pressure of putting out creative content every day. When the people at the school found out about this, they started asking me to create posters for them. I was their best employee. I'd always finish my work ahead of everyone and would always get the best feedback, which I learned was a mistake. Don't give it 100%. Employers will always find a way to take advantage of you, and I wanted to keep on impressing, so I agreed. They used to make really ugly posters anyway, like a bunch of different clip arts meshed into one poster with clashing fonts type of ugly. So I figured it'd be an upgrade. I sent them a really nice poster that my superior loved, but the ones above her started nitpicking it like crazy, asking me to redo some of the illustration by making the kids look even younger, etc. I was pissed off because they wanted the poster the next day and their revisions were annoying as hell. Eventually I just decided I wouldn't work on it anymore and let them take my work or leave it. That was strike one. Strike two was when I was finishing my tasks ahead of everyone. So the higher ups started increasing my workload and letting me take over their jobs without any extra pay. I tolerated it because I thought I wanted to be promoted one day to directress. The last straw for me was when they cut my salary in the middle of the pandemic. While doubling all our workload, I was receiving $100 every 2 weeks for twice or even thrice the amount of work I was doing. I was so stressed and burnt out as a preschool teacher. After killing myself over my job and looking at my bank account the first time they reduced my pay, they didn't even say how much they were going to cut. It was just a surprise to all of us. I decided enough was enough and I resigned before the year ended. All of the higher ups started guilt tripping me, saying that I shouldn't be working for the money, etc. That's when I knew I dodged a bullet by getting out of that toxic work environment. The school made me sign a bond stating that if I quit before 2 years, I'd have to pay them about a month's worth of my original salary to reimburse them for the costs they spent training me. They never did, considering they weren't even paying me what they agreed to. I didn't want to pay it. They agreed to not let me pay the bond on the condition that I forfeit my 13th month pay. I agreed, just so I could get out as soon as possible. Moral of the story is, no matter how much you love your job in the beginning, it's always going to morph into something you'll end up hating. Now, I only work for the money. No job is worth anything less than you deserve. Oh, this is a fun one. I started with a company right out of college as part of a consulting arm. I was employee #2 for the arm and my first year we made about $80k gross. After almost 5 years I helped hire a sales guy, main role but also a tech as needed, and we were making over $550k/e gross. As a side note, the owner was not directly involved as an employee either than administrative oversight to control the money, and we, the consulting arm, also handled all internal needs for the parent company and 3 child companies under that with almost no income generated on the book from that. Eventually we did get to bill 1 child company, but only at half our hourly rate for half the actual time we spent on them. Covered it and 2/3 worked from home. I continued my daily duties, but management, owner, got involved and shifted around positions, making me low man on the totem pole, and the new sales guy got put in an oversight position because he was working from the office, but they didn't want him out in the field interacting with customers and bringing COVID back. After a few months of this, the owner asked me to run an accounting report to show sales by employee before COVID. Report was run, and I was 63% of sales. Employee 1 was 27% or something like that, and employee #3 was about 10%. Now this report was based on the rep for the customer. Several customers employee #3 was the original sales rep for, but much of the ongoing work after the initial sales was done by me, and any upsells and projects I sold counted as him on the report. Now I didn't really care, as when we hired employee #3 he was supposed to be paid a base salary plus a commission on his sales, where me and #1 got base plus commission on everything any of us sold. That report ticked me off a bit as it was pre-covered numbers and showed how much I was doing. I was the one in the field 90% of the time. Once we hit COVID, doing all of our invoicing, and apparently top sales rep by far in all of this, but it wasn't too big of a deal. My wife was complaining because I was always the one sent out on calls and ended up on many projects by myself, even though I had quoted the project with 2 employees to do the work and the customer agreed to pay for it because the other 2 were always too covered up to come out and help on anything. I tried scheduling 2 to 3 weeks ahead. They'd accept and cancel the day if or right before like clockwork each time. For a couple overnight projects I ended up hiring 3 helpers from a staffing agency because the other 2 wanted the commission but refused to work overnight. After a few months, if this I was just mentally done. I didn't really have to interact with them other than a 1-hour meeting each week, so I just kept to myself and kept moving forward. I didn't socialize over Teams and stopped following up with the other 2 to make sure they got things done, which they let many things fall through the crack. I had enough ML documentation and Kanban proof to cover me. Well, they noticed, and ours from the parent company reached out to me to discuss things. I laid it all out and provided my proof with time and date stamps and was told, oh wow, that is a problem. A week later we all get an email saying things have to change. Great. Pay is being changed, so we all make the same commission rate, which equated to about a $12,000/year increase for me, which was nice. The following Monday we meet in person for our meeting. At the start of the meeting I mention how I'm happy I got a raise. Employee #3 looks at me and says, well, glad you're happy because it screwed me. And employee #1. I was puzzled because when we hired employee #3 his base salary was set lower than mine, but a commission level was the same percentage as what it is for everyone now, but only on stuff he sold. With the new change he would make that commission level on everything now, not just what he sold. Well, that is where he explained apparently at some point his commission was bumped up to be 3x what mine was, and he was converted over to make commission on everything we brought in. This pissed me off more, because when I invoiced clients I had to take additional time every 2 weeks to separate out his sales in order to track his commission, when in reality it no longer mattered. Quick math in my head revealed he was making about $25k/year more than me as a sales guy, when he was doing less selling than me and employee #1. Immediately after that conversation we lead into the meeting, and the first thing on the agenda is my sales report. They noticed how much I've sold and want me to plan to step that up this year at it, because I seem to be a natural. This made me livid. I sat in silence, stunned at the audacity for them to push me to sell more. After all, that just happened. We go through some other things and they knew I was pissed. We get to the end and go to leave, and I'm told there is one more thing, and get slid a paper. It's a non-compete agreement. They expected me to sign a 2-year agreement to not do business in our field, the field I got a degree in, and left it broad. When I said no, 2 years is too long, they said it was that way because I have access to everything an executive does because of everything I do for the company. So they wanted an CA to be equal to an executive. I laughed and told them I'd see what my lawyer says. Obviously it was way too open and probably not even valid per my lawyer, but I wasn't going to sign anyway and told them that. After about a month going back and forth and refusing to sign, I got an email from ours stating things will have to change if you refuse to sign. At that point I said screw it and started applying for other jobs and put in a 4-week notice. One of my clients, the biggest, Found out I was leaving, called me and offered me a director position and a sizable salary increase, and no commissions to worry about. On top of that, they had some friends who could use my skills and wanted me to consult with them if I wanted on my time and bill heavily for it. I took the position and almost a year later I love it. I have my own consulting business. My daytime employer lets me flex my time as needed to consult with my clients and has continued to provide me additional leads of business. My consulting is now around 4x gross what I was making at the old employer, plus I have my day job salary and benefits. I'm in the process of looking into hiring an employee soon. After I left, I made sure to stay moral and didn't approach any of my old clients. However, within the first 2 months they were reaching out to me as service went so far downhill. Calls would go unreturned, invoices wrong and 45 days later than they should have been, rude interactions and so on. They wanted me to give them names of someone else to help them. I offered a few suggestions. We would end up small talking, and they'd ask what I was up to, and I was honest. Most decided to ask me to take over things and I gladly obliged. Old employer is ticked saying I'm stealing their business, but I don't feel the need to explain myself. I feel morally and ethically sound in how I did things, even though my lawyer told me I'm in the clear if I did want to approach clients directly. At the end of the day, I work less, make more, and I'm overall happier.